A day before the Israeli Prime Minister addresses the UN General Assembly, his office dashed hopes of a ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah.
US Vice President Kamala Harris slams suggestions that Kyiv should cede territory to Russia to strike a peace deal.
Puigdemont and Comyn lost their appeal to be acknowledged as MEPs in the European Parliament by a definitive decision of the European Court of Justice.
At the UN General Assembly, North Macedonia's president says the country's slow progress to EU accession is like waiting for Godot.
J'ai tenu à demander
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office dashed hopes of a ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah after European and US-led calls for an immediate truce at the United Nations General Assembly. In a statement, Netanyahu's office said the Prime Minister did not even respond and that the Israeli military had been instructed to continue fighting with full force. Netanyahu is set to address the UN's General Assembly on Friday, where he will seek to persuade a world growing increasingly exasperated by Israel's war in Gaza that its aims are righteous. Israel's foreign minister also said there will be no ceasefire, vowing to continue the fighting and returning evacuated Israeli citizens to their homes. The war in Gaza is about to hit the one-year mark, with Israel on the cusp of a wider regional war with Hezbollah.
A night of intense Russian shelling hit several cities in Ukraine on Wednesday. At least 8 people were wounded in an overnight attack on Zaporizhia, including a 14-year-old boy, regional head Ivan Fedorov said Thursday morning. Ukraine's emergency service says 12 residential buildings were damaged in the city and 18 people were evacuated. Videos show heavily damaged houses, windows blown out, and walls pierced with shrapnel. A separate drone attack on Ivano-Frankivsk damaged the city's power grid. 4 central streets of the city and some of the adjacent ones are without power. Some of the city's educational institutions will have power outages for at least a day, and trolley buses have also stopped running on some routes. Ukraine's air defenses also battled drones and missiles over Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, for over 5 hours. In total, Russia launched 6 missiles and 78 drones at Ukraine overnight from Wednesday to Thursday, Ukraine's Air Force said. It said defenses destroyed 4 of the missiles and 66 drones in the air.
Renewable energy sources are under particular threat as part of growing hybrid warfare. Some of the technology is relatively new, so it's more vulnerable. And according to NATO officials, renewable energy is targeted as it represents a shift away from often Russian fossil fuels. Jönköping Energy in Sweden provides 40% of all energy to the region through renewable energy, hydro, wind and solar power for 186,000 people. It's working alongside NATO under the Nordic Pine exercise, helping participating nations prevent and react to cyber and other hybrid attacks.
The attacker is more and more advanced, and I think some years ago people could say, no, we are so small, they will not hit us. Today, the system, the bots, etc., they can hit anybody. We can talk about if you leave your system open without any kind of firewall, it can take seconds before you're hit because they find you.
Cyber attacks from ransomware and also disinformation from either state and non-state groups is increasingly common as a means of doing harm to one's enemy without direct violence on the battlefield.
Cyber attacks by Russia during the invasion of Ukraine 10 years ago were a major wake-up call to the renewable energy sector. NATO and its partners now very much focus on the threat of hybrid warfare and the impact this has on society.
Ransomware is a business. The other thing is, the dependency of electricity everywhere. We can't be without it. So in that case, you can disturb a society very much by disturbing the electricity. And I think if you disturb the society, you will make people scary as well. What is going on? When will we get the electricity back again, etc. So I think it's a very, very good way to create a mess if you would like to.
The NATO-led Nordic Pine exercise is for the private and public sector, including research institutes. It concludes that the challenge of hybrid war, in particular cyber attacks, is best met with prevention and preparedness. And key to that, they say, is constant communication between governments, the private sector, the general public and the military command. Shona Murray, Euronews, Jönköping, Sweden.
The European Court of Justice dismisses the appeal of Catalan pro-independence politicians Carles Puigdemont and Toni Comín to be considered MEPs, which was filed in 2019. The Court of Justice believes that the lower general court of the EU acted correctly in considering that the President of the Parliament should follow the official list of MEPs that came from the document sent by the member state. In 2019, Puigdemont and Comín won a seat in the European elections, but having fled to Belgium in 2017 after the Catalan independence referendum, they were unable to abide by the Spanish constitution, a key step in order to appear in the document sent to the European Parliament. The result that appeared in the Spanish electoral body is seen valid, but the European Parliament considered that the official list was only the one sent to them by Spain.
Same rights and freedoms.
The decision is particularly relevant for Comín, who ran in the last elections for the European Parliament and won, but he has so far been unable to take his seat, and it looks like he will remain so after the ruling.
The Portuguese government has said it will deploy its EU cohesion funds for a speedy reconstruction of parts of the country devastated by wildfires. Authorities say work has now started to assess the extent of the damage in the north and centre of Portugal. The decision comes after a meeting between Prime Minister Luís Montenegro and the EU Commission.
Este diálogo com a Sra. Presidente da Comissão Europeia desembocou na decisão da Comissão de permitir que Portugal possa aceder a 500 milhões de euros dos fundos de coesão que nos estão destinados para os próximos anos e possa cobrir os prejuízos que teve com uma taxa de comparticipação que excepcionalmente pode ser mesmo de 100%.
According to the Portuguese Prime Minister, investigation was also ongoing to find the culprits setting fire to forests in certain instances. The investigation will seek to determine the motivation of the perpetrators and their sponsors.
Os incêndios que atingiram as regiões norte e centro do país na semana passada provocaram 9 mortos e mais de 160 feridos. Os fogos consumiram cerca de 135 mil hectares de floresta entre os dias 15 e 20 de setembro, totalizando quase 147 mil hectares de área ardida este ano, o terceiro pior registro da última década. Joana Marão Carvalho, para a Euronews, em Lisboa.
These workers are meeting at sunrise, not for a shift, but a protest. Volkswagen employees headed out of the town of the company headquarters, Wolfsburg, on their way to Hanover, where the business's leaders sat down with the union. But concerns of those in Wolfsburg are not just about their jobs, but the future of the town itself.
Für Wolfsburg wäre es auch sehr schlimm, weil Wolfsburg lebt durch Volkswagen. Ja, wir würden viele Geschäfte hier schließen müssen. Es wäre ein zweites Detroit. Also Detroit ist das beste Beispiel und Wolfsburg wäre genauso.
Volkswagen is everywhere in this town of 120,000, from the arena to the tourism shop. There's even a museum about the car industry called the Auto City.
The Volkswagen plant is the industrial heart of the whole region. Historically, the whole town is built around the Volkswagen plant, and so everything kind of depends on this factory.
60,000 people living in Wolfsburg and nearby work for Volkswagen in the town. That means much of the local economy is dependent on its employees as customers. Even residents not working for the company feel its influence.
Was bedeutet Volkswagen für die Stadt Wolfsburg? Im Prinzip alles. Der größte Arbeitgeber, und die Stadt hat sich nur durch Volkswagen sozusagen entwickelt. Das ist eben halt das Kernstück.
The mayor told Euronews that Volkswagen led to an economic upturn and social stability for Wolfsburg, and that there is a strong emotional aspect, with most residents driving a Volkswagen car and many having relatives working for the company. That is something felt deeply by the employees.
Es wäre für mich eine Katastrophe. Also wir sind eine Volkswagen-Familie. Meine Familie, mein Opa hat schon hier gearbeitet, mein Papa hat schon hier gearbeitet, ich arbeite hier und mein Sohn arbeitet jetzt auch hier.
People in most European countries are dining out earlier compared to pre-pandemic times. New research by MasterCard shows customers have brought the clock forward by 10 minutes on average. The starkest changes were observed in Austria 18 minutes earlier, Portugal 16 and Ireland 15. Previous studies showed that early dinners benefit digestion, reduce cardiovascular risks and improve blood glucose levels. But according to the research, that's not the only reason Europeans are having early dinners.
One reason is that we are working more flexibly, so we have more control over our schedules and we can decide when we want to go out to eat. And second reason is that perhaps consumers have become more health conscious. They prioritize sleep, they go to bed earlier, they sleep longer.
COVID-19 hasn't only changed dining times. The findings also show that grocery shopping has shifted to earlier in the week. Consumers now tend to shop more on traditionally quieter days, such as Monday and Tuesday.